There's a topic I've been meaning to cover for a while now, and well, if I'm honest, it's been years that I've wanted to discuss that. It's economics. Um, so when you look at economics, it is about money, especially here in the United States. It's gotten to the point where corporations are their only real motivation is money, is putting money into the pockets of their investors, of increasing profits and driving down costs. It's all about that. And that is fatal. And here's why. If we were living in a world that was composed solely of numbers, economics would be fantastic. But like so many other theories that have come before it, economics is not rooted in a world made of numbers. It is rooted in the desire for a world like that, but we're in the real world. We're not in that kind of a world. And so this idea that everything should be based on efficiency and profits and getting costs down is an extremely dangerous one that is ultimately going to be, if we don't get destroyed by like a nuclear war or AI, is probably going to be what destroys us. And some of you have probably read books on economics and you're like, what are you talking about, you nut job? Well, it's really quite simple. And you have to look at the system that economics is within. And when I say system, I mean the holistic system. Now, I'm not using some kind of metaphysical word when I say holistic. Holistic means the whole thing, okay? Whole. So you just think of whole as in complete, okay? So we have, in that system, we have plants, animals, minerals, we have humans, we have water, air, and food. And then if we look at just humans, we have all of these different complexities. There are health needs. There are, for some people, spiritual needs or religious needs. There are psychological needs. There are a lot of other aspects that have to actually be considered, accounted for, and accommodated in order for an economic system to function correctly and not lead to disaster. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say disaster. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that this idea of economics is fatal. This is the natural conclusion of that numbers world put into our world. It will destroy us all, or send us back into the dark ages, because with that kind of an attitude of leadership, not really caring about the psychological impact of decisions, not caring about the needs that people have that can't be met by a low wage. And a lot of companies, for one reason or another, engage in giving us wages that are way too low, whereas the people at the top of the company get wages that are way too high. Now, I'm not saying that somebody who can do the things that are required at the very top level of a company, that those people don't deserve more money. What I am saying, though, is when you cut everybody else's salary so you can increase the top person's salary, and you have a change in income over 50, 60 years, where basically the average worker's rate of pay is flat or slightly declining in terms of real value, versus the top people where they used to have, earned more than the average person, certainly, but not a huge amount. So maybe like this, but in the past 50, 60 years, you see it go like this. That is unsustainable, number one. And on top of that, it sets up the entire system for failure because it's feeding into greed. So the people who are most likely going to seek out those top positions, obviously they have to have intelligence, they have to have some skill sets, but they don't necessarily have to actually be people who care about other humans. So if you look at the percentage of psychopaths, for example, and narcissists and sycophants within the leadership structure of a company, you will see that there are more of them up there than there are down below. And this leads to a recurring incidents where companies are rotting from the inside while the people at the top who don't care about anybody underneath them are enjoying all the fruits that have been created by their subordinates. They're pooping on them at the same time. I mean, it's not trickle-down economics, it's poop-down economics. And don't get me wrong, when Reagan announced trickle-down economics when I was a teenager in the 80s, I was like, that is the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. And it still is. So if you build a system focusing on profits up, costs down, on increasing efficiency, you're going to see an increase in poverty, an increase in stress, an increase in poor mental health, and an increase in poor physical health. And all of those things are going to cost the company money. You're also going to see an increase in overtime, a decrease in the use of break time, and those things also will result in poor health outcomes for everybody within the company. Also, it will cost the company money because when people are stressed out and physically and mentally ill and they don't get enough time to relax and let their brain calm down and stuff, that increases the number of mistakes people will make. Now, there are people who are workaholics and they swear, no, I work much better working 50, 60 hours a week with no breaks. No. There are very few people who can actually pull that off. I mean, very, 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 very few. We're talking on the order of maybe 0.001% of the people at the top and some other people below that can handle that. The vast majority of people are not able to maintain a high level of productivity with a low level of relaxation time and still do well for themselves, for their family, for their friends, and for their company. And that means for the country too. Now, if we stop focusing on ourselves for a minute, because there's more to the world than our needs, right? There's also societal needs. Yes, that's still about us, but I'm expanding out into this view, this large view, this big picture view, where we look at how the effects on individuals within a company that are run in that economic-only fashion that doesn't care for physical and mental well-being and financial well-being and so on, has a destructive impact on society. Because as people go down the socioeconomic ladder, not by choice certainly, that almost inevitably, especially when combined with things like systemic racism and lack of proper health care, lack of proper mental health care, drug use, gambling, and other forms of addiction inevitably causes a localized downward spiral of the society in the area in which the employees of that company work. And if that's just one company, well, okay, the number of people, if there's only one company causing this problem, the number of people that are not in that position vastly outweighs it. And the society as a whole will be able to withstand the dysfunction caused by these people in the bad company. But in America, for example, and many companies, many countries, the problem is the same. So we don't have isolated people in certain areas of the world. We have people all over the world in many, many companies who are suffering this way. And the people on the top, not only do they not see it, but they bribe the politicians to make sure that the deck is always stacked in their favor. In fact, when they see anything that threatens their hegemony, their control, they stomp it out. Some of them do it in very, very violent ways, too. I mean, and I'm not even talking about drug cartels and stuff like that, which are an extreme example. There are great examples like Carnegie and Rockefeller. These men were vicious. They were murderers. They murdered their employees. They took away employees' rights. You can do your own research, but the fact of the matter is when people become too powerful, too rich, they twist the system to further benefit them, taking even more away from their employees and other people in society who don't have enough, whereas these people have way too much. I mean, think about it. Why does any one person need $1 billion? There isn't a justification for it because it tips the scale too much in that person's favor. They already have the ear of the leader of their country. They have enormous influence within multiple industries, in multiple sectors, and maybe even on private lives, depending on which spheres of influence they have. Like if they're a religious leader with $1 billion, they may have a very big impact on society in that regard. So we have a rot that is always shrinking and growing within almost every country. When the people who are greedy and selfish and always say, I don't have enough, I don't have enough, I don't have enough, even when they've got 99% of everything, as they get more power, the rot, the destruction of the society grows. And they don't care because they've got more and they want more and they're getting more. I mean, there are horror stories of what this has done to small nations. I mean, I forgot the name of the country, but there is a small nation that used to be very, very rich in certain resources. And then the people who ran the country, who were like the royalty, allowed the mining of that product until it was exhausted and the land was decimated. There's now very little land that is habitable. There's very little land for farming. A lot of people have had to leave. A lot of people have died. The land and the water are polluted. And those people who allowed it to happen not only did that, but they behaved in insane ways with the money that they were taking too much of and not giving to the people whose land was being destroyed, because the country belonged to everybody, not just the rich. There's no reason why the rich should be the owners of a country or the owners of a large amount of land. There's no reason for it. It just further tips the scales in the direction of rot, of destruction. Now, on the other hand, when we get in the opposite direction, where there's more restriction of wealth acquisition, when there's it gets to a point where things start to stagnate because a lot of people need an incentive. Many people operate on the basis of fear. I'm afraid of losing my job. I'm afraid of losing my home. I'm afraid of losing my car. I'm not being able to feed my children. I'm afraid. But when you get to a certain point where the opportunities don't exist for anybody, whether the rich, the middle class, or the poor, people start to give up. Or they just descend into chaos and madness, a lot of criminality, a lot of gangs. You can see this in ghettos, in different kinds of countries. And the end result is that the country stagnates, the population goes into decline, and that happens in both directions, honestly. But if things become too restricted as far as the ability to save up money or earn money, then people are going to be like, well, why should I? Why should I try? I have no reason to. I mean, it doesn't matter how hard I work or don't. And I watched that happen when I worked at Amazon. I mean, the mode of the way they run things at my facility that I worked at was such that it didn't matter if you worked hard or you didn't work hard. You got the same amount of money as everybody else. You got the same rewards as everybody else. There were almost no rewards based on your performance. There were no performance reviews unless you were above the low level of the level 1 employee. And there were no raises based on your performance, no performance evaluations, nothing at all. Now, that's not typical of other Amazon facilities, but at that facility, that was what they were doing. And it caused a lot of people who came in like me with a very strong work ethic, who were really just, doing a great job, to slowly realize, hey, these people over here, they're not doing anything. I've complained about them a billion times. They're still not doing anything. So why am I trying so hard? Because they won't work and management won't do anything about it. So, and this is not just limited to Amazon. There are lots of other companies that apparently do this kind of thing. And it's one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. It doesn't matter which company it is. If you're going to operate on the premise that everyone you're not going to evaluate their productivity or anything like that. That's just, on the one hand, you can say less stress, but for whom? Is it going to be less stress for the people who are working too hard? No. Is it going to be less stress for the people who are lazy and everyone's always complaining about, so they're being hassled by people in management who do actually care? No. Nobody's really going to be stress-free, and certainly not management. Anyways, getting back to the story. Let's zoom out to a different sphere now, and now I want to look at the environment. When you have an economic system that is only focused on money, on increasing profits and decreasing costs, what do you think is going to happen? Well, they're going to look at everything in a very, I can't say practical way exactly, but they're going to look at it from the standpoint of, what can I use that for? And if I can't use it, where can I dump it? And what laws do I have to follow to avoid getting fined, or at least not getting fined so much that it costs me too much money to ignore the laws? So, every company or many companies are always looking at how much law breaking can I get away with without it costing me too much money. They always do this cost analysis. And if they think that, for example, if you buy a car that is poorly designed and if you get rear-ended, it explodes, like the Ford Pinto station wagon back years and years and years ago. It was one of those examples. And that can happen. What do? Do you recall all those cars and take the loss because you screwed up, because you didn't perhaps test enough, or you launched the product prematurely before you had all of the test results or something? Or do you just say, well, some of those people who get injured or killed, they or their families are not going to come after us. So that's money saved. And some of the people will come after us, but they won't have the money to finish it. So we'll win on that. And there's only going to be a small number of people who are actually going to get to the point where we actually have to pay the money. And so, yeah, it's much better to let people die and get injured than to actually recall this product. We could also talk about DDT, Agent Orange, PFASs, the forever chemicals that came after DDT that were in Teflon. And the list goes on and on and on. There's just one thing after another where a company says, well, the cost in court will be less than the cost of doing this right. It doesn't matter to them that people are going to die. It doesn't matter that people are going to get sick because they will not feel the consequences. They will not suffer the consequences themselves, and therefore it does not matter because financially it's not going to be enough of a burden for them. If you don't think that's callous and unfair, you are part of the problem because that is a horrible way to look at things. It is a way that is going to drive everything to death. And it has been for a long time. I mean, this is not new human nature. It's always been around. But when it gets the upper hand over everybody else because the people going into politics are corrupt and the people that are going into judge positions are corrupt and the people that in every other area of society who are getting into high positions are people who are unethical, who are have no empathy, no compassion, are greedy, and so on and so forth. This is when we get into totalitarian dictatorships. We get into torture. I mean, why else did MK Ultra happen? I mean, why was the CIA allowed to operate illegally in the 1950s in America up to, I think, the 70s, torturing, vivisecting people? Why did the people in Tuskegee who had syphilis, why did the doctors just watch them and not treat them and not tell them that they had syphilis so that the syphilis got spread to whoever they were having sex with? Why did the UK and America and other countries, why did they do germ warfare tests on their own citizenry? I think it was in San Francisco in the U.S. and I think it was in London in the U.K. And so on. And it's just the list goes on and on of these horrible things that are done by humans to other humans. And it just never stops. So then we look at the impact on the environment itself because we live in the environment. If the environment is healthy, we are healthier. If the environment is polluted, we become sick more readily. And when the environment is very polluted, we die more readily. So to treat the environment as if the only thing it's there for is to serve as a natural resource for development of countries and companies is beyond stupidity. It's like, I'm going to stand in this vat of gasoline and I'm going to light my lighter over and over again until it explodes. Because that's what you're doing. I mean, you're polluting and destroying and creating all kinds of toxic situations in terms of bacteria, fungus, viruses, not to mention toxic and poisonous elements and compounds that are building up in the air, the water, and the land. And this is all, again, consequences directly caused by this economic view where the only thing that matters is profits go up and costs go down. And we can continue to go out and out into other systems of the world. It doesn't really make much difference as far as is it good or bad. The vast majority of the systems will be negatively and are negatively impacted. And the longer it goes on, the worse it gets for everybody except for the rich, except for the greedy, except for the people who lack the ability to care about other human beings, about other animals, about everything. Because some of them are like, well, when I die, I don't have to worry about this stuff anyways. So why should I care at all? I mean, I'm going to enjoy my life while I'm alive. I've got tons and tons of money. I can go to the best doctors. And when I'm gone, I'm gone. So let somebody else figure out the problem. So anybody who tells you that pure economics is a good idea is stupid. Now, they're not ignorant. They're just stupid because they're not looking at the facts that I have explained to you. They're not considering the horrible outcomes that have been derived again and again and again throughout history because of this sort of attitude. It doesn't matter what kind of government you have or what political system you have or how you're running your businesses. If you're going to focus on money only, you are destroying everything. There we have it. Thanks for watching and listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I've said. Have a great day.